Thanks for joining me today. During the summer months, we've been studying the life of Joseph. Pharaoh, he was the middle-aged monarch. Joseph, he was in his early 30s. And through God's grace and strength, Joseph stood before the king, there in the royal throne room in the capital of Egypt. Pharaoh was unrivaled as ruler over his nation. He was not only the law of the land, being the complete dictator, he was also worshipped as God. And there he sits on the throne, royal robe, headgear, slaves fan the air around his seat. In one hand he holds a staff that on the top has the head of a cobra. A bowl of figs and nuts sits on his left arm. But Pharaoh isn't hungry. He's not eating. He has a deep frown on his face. Pharaoh's in trouble. And his face and his gestures, they show it. When Pharaoh isn't happy, nobody in the room is happy either. Joseph is brought before Pharaoh from the prison. Genesis 41:14 doesn't tell us a lot. It says Pharaoh at once sent for Joseph, and they brought him on the run from the jail cell. His hair was cut, wore clean clothes, and came to Pharaoh. But when he got there, I think the conversation probably went like this. Joseph was out of breath. He'd been running. "Are you the Hebrew slave that spoke to my butler?" said Pharaoh. Seeing the butler standing by, Joseph gives him a smile, and he nods his head. "Yes, I'm the man from Canaan who was in prison and spoke to your butler." Pharaoh says, "I'm told that you interpret dreams. Is that correct?" Modestly, Joseph says, "I don't take any credit for it, Your Majesty. My God tells me the meaning. I only repeat what he tells me to say." Pharaoh says, "I've had two dreams that make no sense to me. I've been upset for weeks. No magician and no fortune teller in our country that I have asked gives me an answer. If I tell you the dream, will you tell me the meaning just like you did giving a meaning to that butler?" With confidence, Joseph says, "Your Majesty, tell me your dream. I know my God will give you an answer. And when you hear it, you'll know what the dreams are saying, and then you can act accordingly. Tell me your dreams." Pharaoh speaks. "I have repeated these dreams so often I'm almost sick of telling them. Here are my two dreams. In dream number one, cows grazed on the bank of the river. 7 cows were fat, ready for slaughter, and as they were eating, 7 skinny cows snuck up behind them and devoured the healthy cows." Perspiration formed on Pharaoh's face. A servant comes by and he wipes his brow. Then Pharaoh went on, "I had a second dream right after the first one. A stalk of grain with 7 healthy heads was consumed by the stalk of grain with 7 withered heads. These two dreams followed each other in the same pattern. 7 bad devoured the 7 good." Joseph, hearing this, just listens. There in the throne room, there couldn't have been two greater contrasts. Pharaoh the king, in all his splendor, Joseph a prisoner, shepherd boy from a foreign country. Pharaoh in a palace, Joseph from a prison. Pharaoh around his neck had gold chains. Joseph around his neck had bruises from the chains that had locked him up in the prison. Pharaoh commands armies. He rules navies. There's Joseph standing in a borrowed gown, speaking in a foreign accent. Joseph heard the dreams from Pharaoh. Genesis 41:28. Here's the biblical account from Joseph's lips. I can tell you what your dreams mean, Your Majesty. God is letting Pharaoh in on what he's going to do. 7 years of plenty are on their way throughout Egypt. But on their heels is coming 7 years of famine, leaving no trace of the Egyptian plenty. And the famine will be total. The fact that Pharaoh dreamed the same dream twice shows that God has a determination that he's going to do it, and he's going to do it soon. Joseph spoke with these words before Pharaoh, and everybody in the room that heard it just stood and listened. Their jaws dropped. There they stood, even the butler, with a cocky grin on his face, staring at Pharaoh. Joseph's message was so simple. Expect 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Everybody in that room, they knew that Egypt was the land of agriculture. The whole civilization was built on farms. Grain crops made Egypt the jewel of the Nile. It was the breadbasket of the Middle East. If 7 years of famine are really coming, the Nile River is going to dry up. Crops are going to wither. People are going to starve. The nation is going to be vulnerable to attack. And the nation could even be destroyed. When Joseph spoke, you could cut the air in the room. Everybody was silent. Then Joseph, he keeps on speaking. Here are his words. Genesis 41:33. So Pharaoh, he has a job to do. He needs to look for a wise and experienced man and put him in charge of the whole country. And then Pharaoh needs to appoint managers throughout the country of Egypt to organize it during the years of plenty. And their job is to collect all the food produced in the good years and stockpile it in warehouses and silos throughout the country. Pharaoh's authority is going to be the strength of the whole operation. This grain will be held back to be used later during the 7 years of famine. And if you do this, Pharaoh, you'll not be devastated when the famine comes. Can you imagine Pharaoh hearing all this from the lips of a prisoner that he doesn't even know? What Joseph has just done, he told Pharaoh and all his wise men there in the room, you have to create a brand new department. You can call it anything. I'd call it the Department of Agriculture. It has to be complete. More importantly, you have to choose among you a brand new leader who is smart and he's trustworthy. And under Pharaoh's guidance, he's going to handle all the grain for the good years and he's going to distribute it during all the lean years. Now you be Pharaoh for a minute. All his cabinet members are there in the room listening to what Joseph just said. All his department heads. Even Potiphar, he's the head of Secret Service. But you got to remember that all these people are ambitious. If what Joseph is saying, you're going to have to choose a leader that's smart and work under the king. Maybe I'm the lucky one. Maybe I can do it. Every department head hears Joseph's words. Every department head knew what Joseph said in the interpretation also made sense. And Joseph's solution to the impending calamity, he says, somebody smart, Pharaoh, has to be chosen. You're going to be the overseer. What do you think Joseph is saying? And better yet, do you think Pharaoh's going to listen to this guy? Here's a man that he doesn't know that just came out of prison. He's from a foreign land. He speaks with an accent. And here he's telling a weather report for the next 14 years that's going to make or break the whole nation. He has to be somebody smart. He has to be an overseer. Listen to the biblical account from Pharaoh after he heard these words of Joseph. Genesis 41, verse 37. This seemed like a good idea to Pharaoh. And all his officials, they listened in. And then Pharaoh said to his officials, "Isn't this the man that we need? Are we going to find anybody else in Egypt who has God's spirit in him like this man has?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Joseph, you're the man that I'm going to choose. You're going to be the man for the job. God has given you an insight and information that no one else in this nation has given me. And nobody is as qualified as you to experience that because of your wisdom. From now on, you're going to be in charge of all my affairs, and all my people are going to report to you. I, as king, will be the only one that's over you." How is Joseph going to answer that? The first thing that comes out of Joseph's mouth were these words, "Your Majesty, it's not in me to lead your nation, to be the chosen leader. But God will give Pharaoh his best answer." Verse 16, Genesis 41. Then Joseph explained, "God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do." Verse 28. 4 times in just 3 verses, Joseph tells Pharaoh what God's going to do. Joseph, that humble, modest shepherd, he knew God's will very well. When Potiphar's wife tried to make him sin, his response, "How can I do such a wicked thing and turn against my God?" Telling the butler and the baker in prison the dreams, he said, "The interpretations belong to God." Now comes Pharaoh's words. "Can we find such a one as this man in whom the Spirit of God dwells?" Verse 38, Genesis 41. Pharaoh turned his whole kingdom over to Joseph and Joseph's God. That's quite a rebound. Joseph a prisoner in dungeon in the morning, and then in the afternoon he's riding in the royal chariot, second only to Pharaoh in his authority. As you follow the life of Joseph, have you seen your own life unfold? Maybe your life is like his. He was betrayed by his brothers, subjected to poor parenting, slavery, foreign country, false romance seduction, prison for unjust punishment, 24 months in prison, and then comes a turnaround. Joseph becomes the second most powerful man in the country in the world's most powerful nation. Do you think the God of Joseph is still in control of our life? Look at your own world. Is God part of today's answers? Look back over your own pain. Have you had betrayals? Do you have anger? Have you faced tragedies? Do you think what he did for Joseph, he can do for you? You may have faced evil that was intended for you, and you took that evil and you absorbed it. And in so doing, you turned out to be just like Joseph. Old things passed away. All things have become new. You emerged a different person. Joseph began that day in the prison. His day ended with a promotion in a palace. Do you think that can happen to you? In prison 1 minute, next moment, God promotes you. You know, you can listen to his voice. Joseph did. And when you come back next week, you're going to learn just how high up Joseph rose in this new job. His brothers are going to feel it. Pharaoh's going to feel it. Even Joseph's father is going to feel it, who hasn't seen Joseph in 22 years. Next week, I want you to come back and let me tell you about that story. It's one of the best stories in the Bible, and you're going to hear it if you come back. That's enough for today. So good to have you with me. I'll look for you next time.